Buffalo's got a bright future and an unforgettable past. Buffalo's got Del and Matt on the Talkin' Proudcast. Tune in so you can hear philanthropists and volunteers, good people who live and work in the biggest city in Western New York.
Welcome to another edition of the Talking Proudcast. Today we're joined by Val Townsend. Val is a local radio personality from WYRK from the morning show Clay and Company. You've also probably heard her on Mix 96 and various other radio stations around Western New York. We'll talk with Val a little bit about what it's like operating in a COVID world and how she thinks things will change going forward. How now are you doing things differently than you were before the whole COVID thing happened, before the quarantines and the New York pause and all that stuff?
You mean what was life like before? It's hard to remember, isn't it? But everything's different is really the short answer to that question. So I got sick on March 11th and I had a fever, cough. Of course, coronavirus just starts being in the news cycle at that point, and I'm like, uh-oh. So I called the Department of Health. I got a test. It turned out to be negative. So I did not have it, but they had me staying home at that point because it took a long time to get the test and then to get the results. So to be on the safe side, I got a remote unit from the station here. So I'm in my bedroom right now. Isn't it lovely? And actually right over on that side is where the radio studio is set up. So it's pretty cool. It works over the internet. Otherwise, not being able to see Clay and Rob is probably the biggest thing that's different in the morning, because you tend to read somebody's body language, even though what we're making is radio. It's very visual for those of us who are making it. So that part's been a little different, but at the end of the day, because nothing is the same, everybody's just doing the best they can as they are making it all up as they go along. And I think once you get the perspective that what you're going through, while it might be hard or difficult or weird, everybody's having a hard and difficult, weird time. And, I guess like misery loves company, or there's some comfort in knowing you're not alone.
And that remote unit that you have in your home now, that's a normal thing, right? That's something that already existed. They didn't have to completely change the way they engineered things just for you to do this
right. So
separately.
Yeah, that thing is like the same type of equipment that we would take to like the Erie County Fair when we broadcast live, or if we're live from a car dealership or something like that. So it just is in here right now. And I don't have a desk at my house, which is funny. So I moved my nightstand from the side of my bed over to where the radio studio is. So I broadcast from on top of my nightstand every morning. And we make the best that we can out of it. It's a lot of creativity that's involved with figuring out how to do your job from home when you've never done it that way before. And then same thing for all the parents who are homeschooling too. So I have 2 kids at home who, I don't know if they really like their new teacher, but we're doing the best we can every single day. We're trying the best we can to do it. So yeah, it wasn't any kind of new equipment or anything, but from my computer, I'm able to log into the station to be able to see the songs and everything. So it's a lot like being there.
That's really interesting. So hopefully the school part doesn't translate too much into the future, but in terms of like how you're doing your job now, do you see any of that maybe carrying over in the future for, I guess I'll say for your industry, but just in general? I mean, I know a lot of people have had a positive experience working from home, unlike like they had in the past. So I'm just wondering what your thoughts are in terms of like what the future might hold. Like what's going to carry forward perhaps in your industry?
Well, I don't know. In our industry, so sometimes having a talent working from home, that actually isn't too new. It's not as widespread as it is now. I know in my company, there's a lot of different DJs who are working from their house, nationwide from the company that runs WYRK. As far as continuing to do it, I don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, it sounds good, with the at-home equipment, but it's also not like being in a broadcast studio and being with your co-hosts and producers and stuff. So I would say for shows like ours, probably not, a forever type thing, but knowing that we can do it. I mean, if you had the equipment, like if it was still here and there was a major snowstorm and I wouldn't be able to drive to work, right? I mean, hey, we have an option that we know we've done it before this way. And it's funny because I really think the snow days are going to go away with school. right? Because teachers are getting used to putting their curriculum online now this year. They're probably preparing it for a bit for next year. We talked about that. So I used to be a college professor, and we would have that conversation all the time, is put as much of your stuff online. And then if you have to cancel class because of snow, in theory, you don't have to get too far behind. So that's one thing I think we're going to see a big difference, is a huge increase in distance learning, right? Or that online homeschool, or the online version of your in-person school.
Yeah, if I could just real quick follow up with that. So you used to be a college professor.
Yep.
All right. So what did you teach? What did you do? That's interesting.
So I started teaching in, gosh, what was it, 2005, so a long time ago, at UB. And then I taught at Medaille College for a while. I taught a couple courses at Villa. And then in 2008, I took a full-time teaching position at Genesee Community College in Batavia. So that's where I'd been up through this past fall. So this last December was my last teaching full-time, because I was balancing the two jobs together. And it was kind of complicated from how the academic year runs from August to, May instead of January to December. So there was some overlap between when I joined the morning show and teaching. And I mean, if I could clone myself, I would have kept on teaching, but it turns out sleep is important. And it was cool. It was a great job. I taught radio. I mean, it doesn't really get much more fun than that. So I miss my friends there. I miss my other teachers there.
So if the opportunity presented itself to do both somehow magically, you would go back to teaching if you could clone yourself then?
Oh, yeah. Well, you know what? Actually, this is the first semester, this spring semester, since I started teaching, with the exception of a sabbatical year I took a couple years ago, that I haven't taught a course. So I did want to, and it's like, I feel like, well, I'm glad I just decided to take this semester off, because it would have been a lot of scrambling otherwise to get work online. But I've been thinking about going back part-time to teaching. That's always been in my plan, is to try to do that again, because once you love doing something, it's not like just because you're not doing it every day, you don't still love it. So.
And you're the exact you're the, whatever you want to call it, the argument against the argument that says those who cannot do teach, because you literally do both.
I don't know how I would have taught if I didn't also do. Right? I mean, where else do you get the information from? But I think that's what my students like too, is that it wasn't just, textbook stuff, but here's this story of something that actually happened to me, and in a real situation, we might do something like this. So
you've been in radio for, I won't say how long, because I'm sure your listeners all think you're 26.
Let's keep that up.
That's absolutely. But let's just say that I know how long you've been in radio, and it's been a little while. And some sort of major world events, several major world events have happened in the time that you've been in radio. Mm-hmm. How is this different, other than the obvious, about how people are reacting, and how does this compare to things like 9/11, for example, which people are making a huge analogy with for.
Yeah, well, you know what? And I think the analogy with 9/11 comes from just the weight and the gravity of this particular situation, right? It is something that is so major that we all kind of stopped in our tracks and changed everything, which you can make those comparisons to 9/11 if you think about, like they halted all planes. And then before planes were allowed to go again, that's when the TSA regulations first started and stuff. So you can make those comparisons there. I mean, it's tragic, both events, and you can't compare the tragedies. You can't weigh one to be more heavy than the other. But the mood was very similar in the sense that, okay, so like what we do for a living, we're not a news show. I mean, we'll talk about newsworthy stuff, but we're just trying to make you smile and smirk and giggle a little bit on the way into work, So how do we take a serious topic and pay enough respect to that topic, but also still try to accomplish that objective, which is to make people smile a little bit, that part is tough, especially when it's dominating so much of the news cycle. And I think you can compare it to 9/11 like that too, right? I mean, you remember 9/11, you turn the TV on, it's always that. Now though, I think it's different. Like, notice how quickly TV kind of stopped carrying coronavirus 24/7 all the time everywhere. That 9/11 reach, I think, went longer, but the same challenges are there. The weird part about 9/11 was that morning started like any other morning. And then by 10 a.m., everything was different. so the suddenness of that.
Do you think the message that people are trying to get out from a media standpoint is different? It's different. It's more showing hope, and also I don't want to use the term taking advantage of, but focusing on the opportunity that exists because people are home and people are trying to make the best out of being home, more so than we need information, but we need some sort of calm and some sort of solace and some sort of normalcy.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think, when it comes to news stuff, people get their news where they normally get it. And I don't think anyone would answer Clay and Company with that, with that answer. Like when they are looking for, what did President Trump say at yesterday's press briefing or something, like, that's not really what we do. But, what we do is try to bring you back to normal a little. Right. When we first started working from home, I thought that was kind of cool because I was experiencing something a lot of our listeners were, which was, every day you used to go in the office and now you're not, and you have no routine. So now you're the only one in charge of figuring out what is your new routine going to be. Meanwhile, you still have all the same responsibilities, but I think it's been kind of fun. We've had an opportunity to do some really, really cool radio. To have some great stories, to still have the ability to make people laugh. I mean, some of the feedback I get on Twitter is great. Someone was talking about one story I said about the kids. Oh my God, one of these days, they are really going to get on my case about the things I say about them. They're still a little too young to be embarrassed about stuff, but something about someone having poopy pants. And they're like, they said it's good to just laugh about something that's just funny. And it doesn't have to be like, oh, I have to listen to the news now, because that can get fatiguing too. I don't know if that happens to you guys, but I'll get in that depressive cycle where I'm flipping through the news on my phone over and over. And it's like, I can feel the negativity and the seriousness and the weight of all of the worry that I have. And I'm always doing this right before bed, which is a bad idea too. So I like the idea that in the morning, maybe we give people a little bit of a break from it,
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I know what you mean about the feeling that negativity. I remember during 9/11 and the weeks that followed, like just being parked in front of CNN so
Right.
much,
Mm-hmm.
and then the stories began to translate, not from what happened, but to like featuring people on the street, like holding up, putting up signs and banners saying, "Have you seen this person?" And
Yeah.
there's really like emotional. There's a lot of emotional weight to seeing people like pleading to a camera, like if you see this guy, and that they're not going to find
Right.
that person they're
Yeah.
looking for. But so to segue that thought, like what you were just saying, into the next question we wanted to ask was, you talked about how Clay and Company and how your goal is to, give people like some lighthearted giggles or whatever on the way into work. How are you able to navigate that personally in terms of finding yourself, when you're going through the news at night, like you mentioned, and you're waking up the next morning, and now your job is, after having gone to bed, scrolling through all these stories on your phone. Now you have to go. Right? You're not going anywhere. I guess you're not going anywhere. You're going to, your little remote station.
The
And
other
now,
side of the room.
I
yeah,
have
right?
to walk exactly like
Yeah.
7 feet. Yeah.
Yeah. So you have to continue to portray this positive image. And what's that like?
Well, I think what it is it's not that I don't cry. I just save it for in the shower, like most ladies do. I think you cannot be in denial about what you're feeling, so when you're reading stuff that makes you feel negative or anxious, you kind of have to just let it, you know what I mean? And to process through it. I think collectively, we're all going through a grieving process, because we've all lost something. Some of us have lost people. Some of us have just lost a sense of normalcy or routine. My kindergartner lost kindergarten. He's still bummed because they stopped school the weekend of his birthday, that he didn't get his 6th birthday crown in kindergarten. And, we had to talk about that. And I said, it's okay to feel mad about that or sad about that, because it is a loss, and we're all processing different levels of that easy, or harder than others might be, One thing that I've learned about going through any time that's hard, and one thing that I think is kind of cool about this being a collective hard, everybody's usually going through something hard on an individual level, but we're all going through this no matter what. So what do you want to get out of it? Right? We all have to endure or wait for this to pass through. So can we use this time as an opportunity to live our lives a little different, right? To take other things into consideration. We had a talk on the air the other day, and it didn't hit me how kind of bittersweet it felt. But my kids and I have dinner at the dinner table every night now. That never happened before.
Yep.
It never happened before. Somebody had practice, somebody had to be somewhere, I had to go somewhere, someone still had homework to do late into the evening. And we really never had meal times together as a family. And now it's every day.
Yeah.
Like that, I don't want to see go. Right.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more. Like, and I try not to say this too loudly, having two teenage daughters who really miss their social lives. I mean, they have Zoom and everything like that, but they really miss.
It's
their
not
friends.
the same. Yeah.
No, and I totally get it. But like, that's them, and this is me. From my perspective, my daughters are 16 and 14, and they're kind of aging out now of this, the family dynamic in a lot of ways.
Right.
And so this has been a real, I hate to say it's with such a great cost, with society, but like this has been a really great opportunity for our family to kind of like really tighten up. And like you said, I really will miss like every dinner being we go for walks almost every single day around the neighborhood,
Yeah.
It's probably been like 4 or 5 days in the past month that we missed. So,
and conversely, if you want to take your kids and punt them across the backyard because you've had a little too much, like that's okay too. We all have those days. But, Matt, when you said look for the opportunities, or that opportunities can come up out of this, here's the thing. If we sit and we're sad all the time, this is still happening to us, right? Yep. This time is still going to happen. How do you want to spend that time? What do you want to get out of it?
It's more like the longer you take to accept that this is what it is, the longer it'll take you to move forward and change for the better. And I think that's the one thing that I'm trying. That's the message that I'm trying to put out, and the positivity that I'm trying to put out is this is an opportunity to assess. It's literally a pause. You pause the movie and you kind of assess what's going on. You catch up, maybe you rewind a little bit to check and make sure that you didn't miss a part. And then you come back and you realize, wow, in this time leading up to here, I've missed out on these opportunities to have dinner with my family and to go for walks and to pet my dog. And
Matt, how many phone calls I make now? I never used to talk on the phone to people. I never used to FaceTime either. And now I really like doing that, except I have a cramp in my wrist from holding the phone like all day long. It happens,
It's going to be a time that people in a weird kind of way will miss when everything, the time, and I hate to bring up 9/11 again, but that time period right after 9/11, there was so much pride and people coming together so strong.
Camaraderie, right? This sense of we're in this together. Yeah.
Everybody was everybody's brother and sister.
It's okay to admit that was a nice feeling. The feeling after 9/11 was what we needed to get through it.
Exactly. And there's so many things popping up now where people are, raising money for the frontline workers. And honestly, one of my favorite things that has come out of this is birthday parades.
Yes. Oh my gosh. We did one for my future stepson just last week, and it was amazing. There was like 30 cars or something, honking horns. It was so fun. It's really great. And it should stay.
And it also saves me the trouble of having to have a party, right? You just kind of have people drive by and honk the horns. Yeah, it was your birthday party.
Dude, I am not gonna lie. Like I'm kind of excited that I got out of the cost of a 6th birthday party this year. I'm like, baby, we'll just have a big banging one for you next year. It'll be great.
That's where it's at. That's where it's at. And it's been interesting because all these new ideas. Zoom is a thing that we're going to use forever now, and it's been there. But people are, you're going to use it now. FaceTime.
You had a reason to now.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm excited. I'm excited about when things go back to whatever normal becomes. Because I hate to use the term new normal because normal is normal.
That one too.
It doesn't change. Normal is always normal. It's just your version of it or your
usual.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I think there's going to be some really cool, interesting technologies that come out of that. There's going to be a little bit of fear. There's going to be a little bit of caution, but I think people are going to be excited to sort of be real again.
How nice is it to not have to fill up the gas tank all the time though?
I
filled up once since March.
I've spent $100 on gas over the course of the last 6 weeks. Normally, I drive a big V8 pickup truck because I'm compensating for something. And normally it's about $85 a week. And now that money all went into this big
Takeout.
Under Armour purchase and takeout. Yes, we just bought
Right.
yes, I just bought 10 pounds of chicken. I don't need 10 pounds of chicken, but I bought 10 pounds of chicken. So I'm supporting local businesses.
You're lucky that we have to socially distance, or else I'd be on my way to your house for dinner. So.
You've seen me cook. You got it. So quick question for you.
Yeah.
What have you come across that you've seen story-wise, something national or local that you've either had to report on, share, or you've seen within the station or the family of stations that's impacted you the most? What have you really been affected by that you've seen from a story standpoint?
Well, can I tell you what's given me the most amount of pure innocent joy is within the first week of this, I think it was like the first 10 days of the stay home order, the SPCA had all of the dogs adopted out. And then like a week later, all of the kitties were adopted out. Right. And it's just like, what's the barrier to getting a dog for a lot of people? It's, oh, I'm never home. And now it's like people are home all the time and they have a chance to welcome in a new family member. And I just, like if this hadn't happened, that wouldn't happen. And I just think that's so cool. I mean, we got all of these new family members and forever homes, and there's very compelling stories about doctors and nurses and stuff, but like, so it's just something about the animals. There are companions, right? And that everybody went out and got themselves a great companion to go through all of this with, which is cool.
There have been about a dozen dog adoptions in my neighborhood. And I just see everybody in my neighborhood walking puppies and walking dogs around the neighborhood. And I'm like, what, since when does everybody have a dog?
Right. Yeah.
And it's also, that being said too, my dog has gotten walked and pet and paid attention to more in the last 6 weeks than it did for pretty much the other 10 months of his life.
They're all sitting around going, when are they coming?
I know. If you've seen The Secret Life of Pets, you're wondering, are they waiting for us to go so they can go on an adventure or something? So
that's funny. Yeah, I knowing how much dogs love when their owners are home. There's a lot of poor animals out there that are being set up with these false expectations.
I know,
I think I joked about it on this podcast, before, but there's a conspiracy theory that the virus was actually created by dogs, so their owners would have to stay home. But, so as we wrap this up, anyways,
so much peeing on the floor when the separation anxiety starts.
Right?
Whenever their owners go back to work,
they've got to get ready.
Invest in mops, guys.
Yeah, sure.
we spent a lot on Norwex recently, so
yeah,
we'll see where that goes.
Do it. Yeah.
But as we wrap this up, do you have any shout outs or anything you want to plug or anything along those lines? Now's your chance.
Well, one thing I do want to say is that we don't have all of the information about summer concert season, but that's usually a huge time for WYRK and for our listeners. I mean, there's nothing like country music concerts in the summer, when the concerts start happening again, please come, right? Please come. Know what you need to do to stay safe, but I really don't think they're going to start holding these events until they feel like it's responsible enough to go. But I also feel like people are going to be scared, and I'm so bummed. We had such a great concert season scheduled too, right? The good news is that I'm sure those shows will come back, and when they do come back, I really hope that everybody else does too. That's what I'm going to miss all summer. Man, I miss the live music. Yep. Bummer.
Live music, restaurants, sitting outside on a patio, having a beer. Good old.
Oh, and then another
American
thing,
stuff.
You know how much I love coffee, right? So like the Fueling the Frontline stuff. How cool is that? Like that poster is amazing. It's got my favorites, Underground's right there out at the top with a little skull on that one. So, I mean, that's like a quick and easy way for anybody to really hit two birds with one stone, right? You're fueling the front lines. You're also helping to support these local small businesses who, I mean, my dad's a small business owner. They're getting hit far more profoundly than the big guys are. Not that everybody isn't hurting, but this could be a way to make sure that that business is still open for you when we are past all this.
So the people that don't know what Fueling the Front Lines is, I'm going to put a link. It's going to show up here.
Okay, awesome.
Colin's going to put the link here because I have no idea how to do that. I'm going to pretend like it's good. I'm actually going to give him, I'm going to say, put it right there. But for the people that don't know what that is, can you explain that real quick in 10 seconds?
Yeah, you can go to any of the participating coffee shops, and if you go to their websites or use their apps, you're able to make a donation that then goes and gives coffee to the front lines. And all these individual coffee shops have been bringing coffee over to like St. Joe's and all of the other area hospitals, helping keep the doctors and nurses wide awake with like good coffee, not like hospital, the good stuff.
Yes, although some hospitals do have Tim Hortons in them, and Tim Hortons is great.
That's true.
Future
Some of them
sponsor.
have the good coffee. I was talking about that nasty cafeteria coffee that nobody cares about because everyone went to Tim Hortons first.
Exactly. Yes.
Stuff that's been on the burner for 4 hours.
Right. Yeah.
Quick segue too. Actually, it's not much of a segue. It's actually whatever. We're talking about the same thing. Is this podcast is going to be released as soon as Colin finishes the editing on Thursday, the 30th of April. That's today, right?
That's today. Yeah.
Perfect. And tomorrow is Friday, May 1st, and Friday night, May 1st, is an event called Dinner on the House. If you go to dinneronthehouse.org, try that again. And every ticket purchased for that event, which is taking place live on Zoom on Friday, May 1st at 6 p.m., every ticket to that feeds a frontline worker. So
awesome.
Another frontline worker. And hopefully everybody in this room, which is technically 4 of us, if you count Colin, who's sitting over there, will be joining us. There'll be some live music and some celebrities and some fun stuff to do. So, well, anyway, Val, thank you very, very much. We really appreciate you being here with us. Your positivity and your glow is a beacon of hope for people in Western New York. And I mean that honestly.
You're laying it on a little thick there.
Easy as it sounds. Really, people hear your voice on the radio. My whole family were in the car, and we hear your drops and all that stuff that comes through. I'm not sure if I'm using the proper terminology, but your station IDs and all that stuff. And we're like, oh, it's Val.
Aww.
Everything's going to be okay. So we appreciate everything you do. And on behalf of Dell, who I'm sure will say his piece as well, just thank you. Thank you for everything you do. And thank you for being here with us and being accessible and being a real person in Western New York, a mom, a family person. So we appreciate that.
Oh, thanks, Matt. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Go Lancers.
Go Lancers.
Yeah, and I'll just echo the same thing. Thanks for taking the time and sharing with us a little bit of what you got going on, and continue to be that positive voice, and we appreciate you.
Thanks, Del. Keep making good shirts. Andy and I have matching ones of these.
Awesome. Yeah, I love it.
Space birds.
Great. Fantastic. I appreciate it.
26 Shirts does good work. Unofficial sponsor, just a shout out.